So again, this is about, I'm always a multimodal guy. So while probably the topic is smart voice agents, voice is metaphoric for me, not just the speech. So it's like, how do you make sure that when you have the agency that you are able to engage the users better? Because I've been focused on for the last 25 plus years actually rolling out multimodal solutions to the public and getting the feedback. A lot of arrows on my chest, but that said, this is the engagement is a direct function of how you build trust with the users, because people don't trust the interfaces. And now with the new stuff that you have, which is basically earlier we had robotic voice and robotic problems and answering things in a very mechanical, perfunctory way. And now you have confident bluffing. So it is they both are bad. So we are looking at what is the way that we can engage with customers. So if you really look at it, the one most important thing is grounding or provenance or factual information that gives people some confidence in your solution. The second is, even if you are speaking the truth, and speaking the truth harshly is not going to get you customers. So you have to have the right appropriate emotion, engagement, and everything else. And all other human computer interaction factors that Casey and others talked about, which is, when do you speak, when do you take the turn, what kind of listening behavior you exhibit. And when you have your listening behavior, like, you said, and all the stuff, in the end, I didn't get quite that, so that's going to ruin the whole thing. So how do you make sure that people who are engaging with you are actually not led to believing that you are really a human, that you can actually understand everything. And if you are showing some signs of human style behavior, then you better carry that forward and also behave like one. So like, for example, if I'll show you some of the videos where, I mean, I didn't quite get that, or can you repeat that? So if user asks things like that, we don't always read the last sentence fully like that, right? So we paraphrase that. We say that, hey, yeah, before you went for a break, these are the things we are doing, and this is what I was asking you. Is how it would say. So that is another part that we work on. So obviously, trust for me is multimodal experience, because it's about how you speak and how you say it is very important, and the vision, the facial expressions, uh, and then the text and UI that combine the whole thing. So if you're hallucinating, the whole thing is gone instantly. So we have come up with this framework called E-TRICE, or basically the empathy and engagement. That is the foundation layer. Then the accuracy of grounded data, because the knowledge acquisition that you have, like Casey and others, we all had to rejig the whole stack after the GPTs have become popular with instruction following layers. So we kind of built this one to make sure that we have the truthfulness is maintained, even though you have the predictive model, and we want to have the deterministic model combined with it. So we went with an approach called neurosymbolic. So we use the neural models to actually help us acquire the knowledge from basically enterprise data, so that we are grounded in the facts. And there is the provenance shown, and the provenance is not like, oh, it's there in the user manual or it's there on our website, but actually take them to the section where you pick that up from. So those are the things that kind of build the trust from a user's perspective, that you're being truthful. And then you have to always give context aware responses, because then I might refer to the same word but can mean different things based on the tone of the conversation that I had. For example, what's the weather? Will it rain? What's the weather in Boston is where I start. We all know these classic examples. And then I change the city. Tomorrow I'm going to be in Houston, and then will it rain? So will it rain is not about Boston, but you have to understand that the context has changed. So that is the relevant information. And the informativeness, that is the right depth at right moment. So again, LLMs tend to be very verbose, unless you really, much of the work that we are doing nowadays are actually, constraining the LLMs and the other models that we use to make sure that they behave properly, reading in the stuff. And then the other part is the clarity. Don't throw URLs at them, or just like how the news readers say, for more details on this, check cbs.com. We don't know for that particular news item where in cbs.com this information is available. That is not normally there. And explainability is talked about a lot, but very rarely I have seen a system that is actually explainable. Again, let me qualify what I'm saying. Explainability is something that you have to kind of build it as part of your foundation itself when you're building a solution. So when you have a transactional model where you are just having interaction back and forth, it's not necessarily learning anything to explain anything to you. And people, when they use humans, when they say explainability, they expect some kind of causal reasoning. So that's what they meant, and which is all of us know who have been in this field, it's extremely hard. For example, we have many insurance companies as clients. So the customer asks factual information, grounded information. So you have either RAG model or you have knowledge graph model, whichever model that you use. You are able to retrieve the information and provide the policy coverages and things like that. They'll simply ask a question: why is my premium for my Honda more than that for the Mazda? Now, that is not something that any LLM can do today. We have tried everything that's in the market as of last week. So despite all the claims about reasoning, because if you really look at it, causal reasoning is hard. The definition of premium is probably where they would have captured many of the aspects about how premium is computed if I were to mimic the human level reasoning process. So what we do there is that, okay, if the car is more stolen, the pricier, and then you are living in an area that is more stolen, that is vandalized, and or you yourself had a bad record. These are all factors that will influence the premium, why one car is more than the other. So those are the things that you have to know how to find, even if you build an agentic AI and get that. So it should not be like a hard-coded process, and this process has to be dynamic based on what it finds. Those are some of the things that we're building in terms of explainability as a foundation. Again, operate basically empathy through how you speak, match the voice confidence to your data. If somebody says that I just got into an accident, then you better show some empathy and say, instead of saying just, oh, I can help you file a claim, you just say, I'm very sorry to hear that. Are you okay? Is everybody all right? Nobody is hurt. And then you show that you pay attention to those things, and then align responses again to the user environment. Because users blabber, they don't give you atomic answers always. So multiple speech acts, I think somebody spoke about that. When you have multiple speech acts, it's very difficult if you did word by word level recognition, because then there is a change of mind. They just change the whole thing at the end of it. And then whatever you built until that point, you have to throw away. Again, the clarity through fusion. Again, they point gesture at something and speak something. How does this compare to that? And that kind of referential expressions are to be supported in order for them to trust your system more. Again, frustration and hesitation are the things that you have to take visual and multimodal cues. I'll show you some of the multimodal mental health assessment models that we have for Hamilton, depression, anxiety, and PTSD kind of applications. Again, correction. Again, error. People focus on everything else about providing factual answers, but very rarely people focus on the how you report errors, or if you have to make a correction, if something did not work, how do you recover from that? Those are the things that will give them the trust, instead of dumping an error code 404 occurred, or my favorite, which is the least favorite, is the unknown error occurred. So things like that won't help anybody, whether it's visual interface or audio interface. So those are the graceful degradation in performance, and recovering from those things are extremely important, especially in voice, because voice and avatar, when you have the digital human, you need an hourglass on a browser window is okay. People know that you are fetching some data, but if you are just staring at them, it freaks them out. If you don't get, while you are waiting for the answers to come back from the backend systems. So again, how do you build this kind of an agent when there is uncertainty and when you are fusing multiple modes of inputs? I might say that I want that, but I'm not gesturing at any. So what happens then? How do you infer, and what would you point out, and where would you point out? Would it be like a screen blinking or show me here, or would it be like through voice? And those are things that you need to work out based on the ambient conditions and how that would work for them. Um, so it's not just a dialogue, it's or a data point. The point I'm making is, let's start with some of the things that I've done. For various reasons, I'm not showing the live stuff. So this is, the name is already there. So if you ask a question, what is my annual aggregate limit for employment practices liability? It actually shows you the annual aggregate answer is this, and then show policy and email policy. This probably some of you have seen Perplexity and others, they'll show you this kind of stuff. But when you click on that, this is what pops up for you. It actually opens the document and it kind of highlights where it picked up from. So this kind of immediately it gives that confidence that the answers are something that I can rely on. And similarly, when you are doing the mental health and other things, it's kind of shows, the avatar shows what the person's facial action units and landmarks and many other features. It kind of analyzes along with your speech and your stuttering, your tense, what is this gap between the successive words. Those are all used to figure out whether you are under duress and stress. So this kind of shows some kind of an empathy and concern. And when you're smiling, it obviously knows. We track all the Ekman emotions of happiness, neutrality, sadness, anger, and engagement, and person detection. So if you move away from the viewfinder, because when humans are talking to each other, we don't necessarily continue talking if the other person is checking some messages. So we see that they are distracted or they get a phone call or something like that. We pause automatically. So how do you teach that behavior to the system so that it doesn't continue speaking while you are distracted? Or if you move away, like it's common in Zoom calls, they start and leave from the frame. So you have to do the person detection to see if the person is present or not, and based on that, you have to answer the thing or explain the thing to the user. So if somebody is angry or sad, you just speak to the person appropriately. So these are 3D avatars, and we have a whole end-to-end system for multimodal analysis and also synthesis. So there is a non-verbal behavior generation, there's listening behavior, and then keeping the long-term context. And when you say something, when you have a change of mind, this is how realistic it will look. This is actual screen capture from a customer. So we can actually create a digital twin of a human and also do the motion personality detection and things like that. With that, I want to show one demo, which is an immersive demo where you're walking around. This is for a restaurant owner trying to assess the kind of risks that he has to mitigate, and whether his coverages are enough or not. So it is kind of giving them the risk engineering report. So if you see this, the person is walking around with a mobile phone and seeing what the system is seeing. System repeats some of the elements that I talked about in building the trust are present here. So the person is walking around with a mobile phone. It's simple.
I am able to see the refrigerator. Please show me the label to examine the brand, model, and other details.
That dialogue is based on the grounded. That means there is a process guideline that is you are able to ingest and it understands. There is no hard coding here. So it knows what it has to look for. And as part of the workflow, whatever is the objective that is set, the same agent could be used if you set a different objective.
I found a General Electric Company refrigerator. Please move on to next item. If you have covered all the items, you can end the session.
So these are some of the issues that you will typically see. When you're trying to capture this, the whole is
I am able to see the fire extinguisher.
place.
Please show me the label to examine the brand, model, and other details.
So you can actually give voice input to correct that stuff, to give additional.
I found a City Fire Equipment Company fire extinguisher. Please move on to next item. If you have covered all the items, you can end the session.
The inspection date is May 4th, 2024.
So it kind of records that information and then shows towards the end a report is generated that will show you where all it has, what images it has taken. Everything is documented as a PDF and shown. I also want to show you this one.
Hello. I really like your choice of jacket. It adds a nice touch of professionalism to your look. How are you doing today?
So you're able to see me, right? So this is live. I'm not doing so well.
As this is a demo, not all of my multimodal capabilities are available at this time. I am sorry to hear that. However, I am able to monitor your emotions and personality. I hope things improve for you. Just click on Show Graph in this demo to see for yourself. Hey, I am still here. Are you occupied with something?
So you see that automatically generates the dialogue. And if I move away from the thing, it'll say, come back to the frame and things like that.